Hi everyone and welcome to my video. Today I'm going to show you how to paint this lovely Christmas themed robin watercolour painting, especially for beginners. My name's Jarman. Let's get started. So the materials we're going to use in this painting are a piece of watercolour paper stuck down to a board, to keep it nice and still and flat while we're painting. Just use some masking tape to do that, and a piece of thick cardboard is perfect to stick it down to. You're going to need a HB pencil to make your drawing, possibly a rubber in case you make any errors. You're going to need two brushes. I'm going to use my number 4 and my number 2 round brushes. The paints we're going to use today are cadmium yellow, which you can't quite see. I'm just going to move that across so you can see my paint colours there. So we've got cadmium yellow, we're going to use cadmium red for the robin's redbreast, ultramarine blue and a mixture with the cadmium yellow to make a nice green for our foliage. And I'm also going to use a brown. Rather than mixing today, I'm going to use burnt sienna, which is also in my palette. It's just off screen there. Okay, so I'm just going to pop a little bit of water down on my palette, and I'm going to pick up some of the burnt sienna. Okay, and I'm just using my number 4 round brush, and first of all I'm going to paint the brown part of the bird. At the same time I want to prepare my red so that it's ready to go, because I want to do a little bit of wet in wet painting so that it blends nicely on the paper. So I've got my red prepared as well, and if you just put that brush to one side for the time being. I've already prepared my drawing. There's 2 little robins. They will be sat on a branch with some foliage, which I've not bothered drawing in. I'll paint that in as I go. And I don't know if you could notice, but there's a few little shapes at the bottom. They will be pine cones eventually. Okay, so let's make a start. So I'm just going to quickly go from the top of the bird's head with the brown and paint around the eye, around the beak, and just bring that burnt sienna all the way down the back of the bird. Leaving a space for his red breast in there. I'm going to do some little flicks with my brush at the end so that you can see that he's fluffy and feathery. And I'm going to quickly swap brushes, pick up some of the red paint, and straight away come onto the breast of the bird and apply that red. Allow it to touch a little bit with the brown as well so that it just blends in at the edges there. And I'm going to do a sort of a rough bottom by cleaning off my brush, dabbing it on a piece of paper towel, and with that damp brush and a little bit of clean water, just going to drag some of that red down to blend that red paint out. So using the brush just to drag some of that paint down to the bottom of the bird there. So he's sort of got a little bit of texture on the surface. I'm just working into that red a little bit more along the join. Blend that in a little bit. We can also go back into the red, maybe a bit deeper, and come to the top. And now it's beginning to dry, we can add some texture to that breast by doing some wet on dry marks right at the top, and intensify that colour so it's really looking nice and bright there. Okay, so I'm going to clean my brush off, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the bird on the left hand side of the paper. So this one's facing slightly more to the side, so we can see more of the back of this bird, but again, starting at the head and working my way down, make sure I get the brown around his face. Drag that brown down the back of the bird. Missing the breast and just coming down, suggesting his tail down here. Okay, got his beak there as well, which you can probably see the line drawing of the beak there. Going to do exactly the same as I did on the previous bird. Pick up some red paint. I'm just going to add a bit more water to that and paint the breast of the robin, just touching the edge of that brown there, and doing the same as before, cleaning off my brush in the water, dabbing it off, using the water now just to thin that paint out and drag it further down the bird so it becomes much more paler as you go, blending it with that brown at the bottom there. Okay, and then as before, picking up a bit more intense red and creating a nice vivid red breast on the front there. Can do a little bit more blending. Damp brush, blend some of that out, create a more feathery look to that bird there, and we can create a few little marks on his back if you want to make him look fluffy. Okay, so that is the basis of our bird. I'm now going to look at the beak. Now, I didn't mention this at the start, but I'm actually going to use a little bit of Payne's Grey just to add the details to the bird there. So I'm going to paint in the eye first of all. Try and leave a little bit of white for a highlight. So using my small round brush and just placing the tip, very tip point of the brush, you can paint tiny details and have control of that. I'm going to do the same thing with my second bird. And then painting in their beak. Lovely. Now, if you want to create some extra detail on the bird, now that the brown has dried, we can take some more brown onto that small brush and just create some suggestion of texture. So this extra layer of brown will give some depth to that colour. So we'll have lighter areas, we'll have darker areas, and it gives us that opportunity to create a feathery effect. So we can do that on both birds. Just little brush strokes touching the tip of the brush and creating some sort of feathery effects there. Suggestion of his tail at the back. Maybe a little bit darker at the bottom. I think that's about it for the birds. That's lovely. And we can add, excuse my phone there, we can add some little feet in if necessary once we've got the twig and the foliage on there. So first of all, I'm going to just mix a slightly darker brown, so adding some of the ultramarine blue to that brown that I already had on my palette. I now mix a darker brown. If I show you on a test strip, we can create a much darker brown there. At the same time, I'm going to just have some straight burnt sienna over here. So we've got 2 shades of brown on the palette ready to go. And this way, as I paint the twig, we can get some texture straight away. So using my small brush, this one's my number 2 again, and I'm just going to suggest where my twig will come. We might have some twigs coming out as well down the bottom, so just sort of placing where I think we could have some foliage and some part of a branch from a tree, and then go in with the darker brown, just touch it here and there just to add some interest and some difference in colour. Okay. We can tidy that up as we go, that's fine for now. So washing off my brush, and for the pine cones I'm going to first of all use the dark brown, just make some little suggestive marks for the pine cones there, and then I can come in with a slightly different brown afterwards, just to add a bit more detail. So very suggestive. There's no real, it's not perfect, these pine cones are anything but perfect. They're like little scribbly marks really. Just dabbing down the brush just to create that sort of shape, that layered shape, and that's great. So now we've got to think about how to create our green for the foliage. So it's going to be a pine tree. Obviously we've got pine cones there, so we need to think about pine needles. So I'm just bringing across a tiny bit of water on my palette. I want to add some cadmium yellow, which is a beautiful colour, cleaning off my brush so that I don't get mucky colours in my palette, picking up some of that ultramarine blue and mixing that in. So there we have a nice green, a lovely fresh green, and what I can do is I can pick that green up, move it somewhere else on my palette and mix a slightly darker green. So wash off my brush. Every time I'm drying it on a bit of paper towel, pick up a bit more blue into that green, and there we have a slightly darker green. So 2 different greens for our foliage. And I'm going to begin with the lighter green, and pine needles are obviously nice, long and thin. So we're going to create some spiky needles. So what we want to do first of all is pick where the vein, if you like, the centre of the needle is going to go, and then we want some long strokes coming from the centre there and making our way to the end. So we'll do a few of those. dragging that paint out. So if you start to build up some of this foliage, we soon begin to create a lovely picture. I find that if you're quite quick with your painting, then you get sort of more natural marks. If you release some of the control that you have over your work, usually it's a little bit more natural looking. Nature's not perfect, and we have a lot of variety in nature, and excuse me, and it's sometimes difficult to create random kind of effects, really. So our brains try and make uniform marks, so it's actually quite difficult to make a variety of things happen. Now I'm going to start with the darker green, and I'm going to put in some more foliage just to sort of start to fill up. Where do I want this one? So stop and think and have a look at what you've got, and maybe see where you've got some gaps. You can have things overlapping, so that works nicely. We can have an overlapping one here in the darker green. Let's see, let's have something. Let's have something coming down here. Underneath the bird there. I definitely want some more on the left here. And it's starting to come together a little bit more now. Let's have a look. Let's have some coming from this branch, so we'll have a couple coming around like this, just to fill out this side. Maybe go back into the lighter green now, pick out some of that detail there. And that's really nice. I think what I'll do is just to balance the two sides out, we've got a little gap here, so I'm going to bring some more foliage down this side, just to bring it along to the right a little bit, and fill that out a bit. So just dabbling with it really, and then I want to come back and just do some more with the pine cones. So in actual fact I'm going to go darker rather than lighter. I thought I might use a lighter brown on them, but actually I'm going to go back into the blue and make a slightly darker mix by adding more blue and a touch more of the brown, just to thicken the mixture up a little bit. There, we've got a really nice consistency. If I just show you again on here, if I put it in the centre, you can see it's a much thicker consistency, so slightly more opaque. I'm going to use that mix to just add a few more details to this pine cone there. And starting at the one end, and want to make it look like it's sort of overlapping itself, because they come together in a really nice pattern, pine cones, don't they? So just again sort of squiggly marks just to enhance that a little bit. I want to add some shadow underneath the birds. Let's bring in some dark just beneath them. Could possibly put some darker bits into the tail there, and maybe down his back. Some shadow under this bird here too. and I'm going to use the grey, the Payne's grey, but in a thicker consistency. So when I say thicker consistency, I mean more paint and less water, so you get a much thicker, darker consistency of paint, a little bit less transparent. So the more water you add, like this one over here, the lighter the colour and the more you will see the paper through it, so it'll be a lighter and a more fluid consistency, thinner consistency. So using this thicker mix, if I make a little bit more, I've probably not got enough there. I hope you can see that's just going off camera, isn't it? If I drag this down, this is my thicker consistency here, and I'm going to use that just to oh, a little bit more water, it's a bit dry, just to make a couple of little suggestions of feet there, the toes, and this bird, I think I'll have a leg coming forward like that, and then you might possibly, let me think how it would be, possibly see the other one there too as well, just a little suggestion because he's looking at a slightly different angle. Yeah, and I think if I have a look at it, it's just, that's looking quite nice. I might do a little bit of splatter with some green because I like that technique, and it'll just give it some movement and a little bit of dynamism in the foliage. Some more texture, you know I love texture, so just giving it a little bit of texture on that left hand side. If you do get some spots on your bird or somewhere you don't want it, just lift it off with a paper towel, and that's really nice. I like that. Let's have a little bit. With the trick with your splatter technique is to have enough water and enough paint on your brush, and then you find as you really tap down firmly, the paint will release from the brush. Yes, I'm happy with that. Welcome back. As you can see, I have removed the masking tape from around my painting and it's all thoroughly dried now. I'm really happy with that. I think the robins look super sweet, and somebody's going to be very happy when they receive that on the front of their Christmas card this year. If you've enjoyed painting along with me today, then if you'd like my video, that would be super. I'd really appreciate that. And if you think you've learned something and would like to see more of my videos, press the subscribe button and the bell icon to receive notifications every time I upload a new painting video. See you again soon. Bye.